Hey there, Dad. Are you looking for easy ways to strengthen your bond with your kids? I get it. Life can be hectic, but connecting with your little ones doesn't have to be complicated. I have a free resource for you: 10 incredibly easy ways to connect with your kids today. Packed with simple, research backed, practical tips, this guide will help you create meaningful moments with your children, even on the busiest of days. Head over to adventures.dad/free download and get your hands on this invaluable resource today. Because the moments you share with your kids today will become the memories they cherish forever. Go to adventures.dad/free download to get this free guide today. As a dad, you and I know that we need to share more time with our kids. And we want to, but we sometimes forget to intentionally set aside that time. Today's guest takes a deliberate approach to making time each month to experience new things with his kids. Meet Greg, a dad of 3, almost 4, who started what he calls a dad day with his kids. I'm Aaron, dad of 4, and your host. Thank you for joining me on Dad Ventures. Be sure to hit that subscribe or follow button, leave a rating or review, and share this episode with a friend. And after you've listened, head over to the Dad Ventures store to find simple games and products designed to help you share more time and make more memories with your family. The website is store.adventures.dad or tap the link in the show notes. Well, Greg, thank you for joining us on the Dad Ventures podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Help the dad who's listening to this understand what is Dad Day?
So it's evolved a little bit, but ultimately what it has come down to mean is a Saturday sometime in the month where I kind of assume full responsibility for just about everything going on that day. Not only like planning one fun thing to maybe do with the kids, but I take care of all 3 meals and just ensure everything's going that needs to happen that day happens across the full gamut. Really, the idea of like this is a holiday, not just of things that need to be done for my wife, but like the mental burden of thinking about what needs to be done that day. And it started when our kids were younger. So, I've got a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 6-year-old. So when they were younger, it's probably been like, I don't know, maybe we've been doing this like for 4, 5, maybe even 6 years. I'm not sure, but it's kind of evolved because when they're a lot younger, right, they need you almost every moment, or they need something. And just the mental burden of trying to like, I'm going to open this lid for this kid, and I'm going to, smile at the artwork of that kid while I'm also trying to do all these other things on Saturday. It's a lot, right? I think any father listening to this understands that, right? So that's kind of the idea around this. And it's changed a little bit, but not a lot.
Yeah, this is really interesting. What was the inspiration behind Dad Day? Like, where did it all begin?
I am trying to think exactly how it happened. I think I've had many conversations with my wife over time about about things, whether it's like with holidays or just as we divide the labor inside and outside the home and how that looks. And she had made a few comments of like, hey, you get days off of work, but as a stay-at-home mother, I never get a day off. And she wasn't, whining or anything. She just kind of made that observation. I was like, that's true. Mm-hmm. I work outside of the home, and then I come home and I feel like I'm at my other job, right? Mm-hmm. But it's different because, I do have that, whether it's a commute or that time away where I'm interacting with adults, it's work, but it's a very different kind of labor, right? And so I don't know exactly when or how, but the idea of, well, what if you did have a day off, and you kind of could bank on that, like you knew it was coming, was something you could look forward to. If you need to go have like a long hair appointment, right? Or you wanted to get together with some friends, hopefully she could feel comfortable doing that anytime. But this would be like kind of a guaranteed time, like, hey, anytime this day you could do whatever you wanted to do. on that day. And she really liked that idea. And we started off by calling it Mommy Day Off.
Hmm.
But the more I thought about it, I was like, I don't want to define this day by, one person not being around, right? Especially as our kids get older, this idea of a day off from you doesn't have a great connotation. Trying to emphasize, hey, this is Dad Day. Like, this is a day that we're going to do different types of things. Maybe we're going to try something new or whatever. And some are more unique than others. Like, some are just very normal. Like, nothing extra special happens. It's just Dad's kind of doing these things, and we're around here with them.
So I want to know a little bit. Like you say, some are normal, and you're just kind of hanging out at home. So kind of help me understand a little bit. Are you like trying to take the kids out on adventures so that your wife can have quiet time at home, or kind of how does it function? How does it work?
Yeah, I mean, so when my kids were much younger and just like kind of needed constant input to them, and they still are that way, but in different ways. Yeah, I would always, and I still try to do this, is find like what's one thing we could go do outside of the house. So I've used that opportunity to like, hey, I'm going to take you to this place. You've never been before. It's the Springville Art Museum. And when they're super young, they don't have a mental model to decide whether that's cool or not cool or exciting or not. It's just a different place. Bro, let's go there. Or if it's winter, like I'm going to take you up the canyon and we're going to walk around in some deep snow, like really deep snow. So having like one thing out of the house, and then it's been at least 4 years since I had this realization of like I was a film major once upon a time, and I used to watch lots of movies that were not just like the latest Marvel movie or the
Hmm.
latest Pixar movie, which nothing bad at all. I love Pixar movies. It's just, yeah, I didn't, I used to stretch my horizons when it came to movies, and now I don't. I thought, you know what? This is a part of me that I'd like to share with my kids, and they're not going to complain about watching a movie. I'll just make the condition is that I'm the one that chooses the movie. And so, the opportunity to watch a movie with Dad, and hopefully it's not too boring kind of thing. And that's become a staple of Dad Day is Dad movie. And probably that's how they think of it in their mind is not Dad Day anymore. It's more of like, when are we going to watch Dad movie?
Uh-huh.
And I've been shocked. Like we've watched silent movies, like Buster Keaton movies, and
Wow,
like they were not only on the edge of their seat, like standing up and screaming with excitement and delight, which shocked me. Like I thought they would hate
that's
it and like
amazing.
revolt. Yeah. And we've watched just some old classics that they just aren't going to see when they're like flipping through their million options, in their typical media time sort of thing. So
Hmm.
that's been a special way to share things that I care about, or at least once cared a lot about, and hopefully exposes them to things too that they might not normally come across.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So sometimes there's a little bit of an adventure. We're going to go visit the local art museum, something outside of their kind of normal range of activities, but also bringing it back home. And here's maybe some classic films that will move you in a way that probably some of these newer films might not do that. I love that. You also said that you are managing all three meals of the day. Is that something that you are doing on your own, or do you try to include the kids in that, or is that just a regular just doing meals?
Yeah, for the most part, it's on my own. And now, especially like for lunch and for the most part breakfast, like they can mostly help themselves. Um, my wife and I try to involve them uh, for the whole week of like, what ideas do you have? What should we eat? They have their regular dinner chores, and at times we've had it be like dinner helper, but we always forget because
Hmm.
we're
Hmm.
just by the time the dinner's made, we're like, oh yeah, someone is supposed to be the dinner helper. I think my oldest, he's getting to the age where I think he could probably start picking up making one of the meals, or at least significantly helping with one of them. Usually just try to plan on something that would be fun, and you can sometimes weave in your adventure with it. Like, let's bring some food to a park kind of thing, like have a picnic, or um, maybe we'll pick up fast food if we're going to make it extra special, because I'm always holding my pennies very tightly.
Hmm. Hmm.
But that's a surefire way for them to be super excited, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are food. Of course, can play a big role in a lot of things. But yeah, I
Yeah.
try to make it fairly simple, so I'm not spending a long time making it and away from them that day.
Yeah, absolutely. Try to keep it simple and involve them a little bit. That's great. In terms of the adventures and the activities, circling back around a little bit, like what was one of the craziest adventures that you went on with your kids that just totally blew their minds?
Well, two things come to mind. One was so we used to live in Arizona. I was always like when I was thinking about what we are going to do, like surfing the internet, looking for like free fun things, family, kids. You know, it was like my Google search terms.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and we find out about some random things. So like we went to a gem show. Like gem shows are really big in Tucson. When my oldest at the time was like 5 or so, you know, just like, and he was obsessed with rocks. And so that was pretty awesome. Like you can imagine just a giant expo center full of rocks, you know?
Yeah.
So I remember we went there and he was like super excited. My daughter wore her Elsa, you know, dress to it. Like
Hmm.
somebody commented like, "Wow, where'd you get that ethnic dress or something?"
Oh, that's awesome.
I was like, "Well,"
Yeah.
so she was very flattered that someone commented on her
Yeah.
dress, right? So like
Yeah.
that was really cool. We also went to this. We learned about this random astronomy event that was happening with like this society for astronomers. It was mainly like retired senior citizens who live in Arizona who like to look at stars. We're like hosting this event, and like we got to go look at the moon through a telescope, even though it was like in the
Oh,
day and we
wow.
could see
Yeah.
it really well. And then they had a bunch of these cool activities, and one where they had like the first photo ever of a black hole, which my son was like, it was really cool. And I just found that like Googling around for free events, and you know, because I just had a little intentionality, we went to there and that was cool. And then most of the other activities though that I thought were just nothing that seemed to really blow their mind was like we found a new park and it had a concrete slide, you know,
Mm.
and
Hmm.
they talk about that a lot, like, oh, that was so cool, that one concrete slide, you know, stuff that you just don't plan. But I find that some of those things are the most memorable, like where you just go like, yeah, we've always talked about stopping on the side of the road to go look at that thing, and like today's the day we're gonna do it, you know. And that's just so exciting as a kid to like, oh, we're actually gonna walk over into that field and look at what's on the other side, right, or whatever. We live close to a lake, and so we just go to an area we call the maze, and we just walk around and see what we find, and they just get a huge kick out of that, like way more than you would expect.
It's funny how some of the things that you and I would consider so everyday, so doldrum, a
Mm-hmm.
concrete slide, a new park, a new place, how those can be so exciting for kids because, all of a sudden something that was out of bounds or out of their thought was now in, right? And they get to experience that together with you. That's really fun. What
Mm-hmm.
what do you feel has been the greatest benefit from doing these dad days for the last 4 years?
Two things come to mind, one for them and one for me. So for them, it's this opportunity where it's kind of this ritual now, where they've come to kind of not expect it in a entitled way, but like I hope at least anticipate it. They'll know that
Hmm.
it's coming and they look forward to it, and it's this positive time that we're spending together. So despite how many times I yell at them for X, Y, or Z.
Clean up your room. Put your shoes
Yeah,
away. Yeah.
which is, you know, more than I care to admit, on a daily basis. Like they have anchored experience that's not just like a one-off fun random time, but like this, you know, body of experiences that we've had together. And I think that's not only connecting them to me in a way that I think is really healthy and good for them, but it's connecting them to each other. So for me,
Hmm.
it's kind of like what you mentioned. It's hugely enjoyable to, you know, it's one thing to like watch a movie you like again, but it's totally different when you're watching it with someone who's never seen it, right?
Yeah.
And suddenly it's like you're seeing it for the first time, right? I
Hmm.
think that's one of the huge joys of kids, period, in your life is you're seeing the whole world in just a new way, like you hadn't imagined before. And seeing connections that they make to these things, to things that they're excited about. Like, oh, I never would have connected that to Scooby Doo or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And it's just it brings so much delight. And for a person entering into their middle age, when and there's this kind of connotation of a midlife malaise where you're kind of like, what's my meaning? What am I doing in this world? I go
Hmm.
every day, I show up and I clock in and I stare at my computer and I hit some keys and then I leave. It's immensely refreshing, invigorating, energizing, and meaningful, right? To have just these little moments with to live the world through a new perspective, right? To go sit in a hot spring that's only 5 minutes from our house, but it took us 3 years to try it out. When we finally did, it was like, wow, this is so cool, to go there in the middle of the winter, right?
Hmm.
Like little things like that. It's just suddenly, wow, life is amazing. It's delightful. And there's so much magic around us, but like, it's easy to miss because you get calloused and you get old and lose your hair and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but
So,
all of a sudden you're out there with kids, and they're seeing this hot spring for the new time for the first time, or
mhm.
as you said, experiencing a film together. I remember when I first introduced my kids. I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan, and I introduced my kids to Lord of the Rings for the first time, and I had to set some ground rules. Like, we're not going to talk. You're not going to ask Dad questions. And when Dad says close your eyes, you got to close your eyes. And they were so excited to step into Middle Earth with me because they knew how much I loved it, that they
Mhm.
followed all the rules. And it's become for us an annual tradition to do a Lord of the Rings marathon together with Dad. And you speak to these rituals, these things that are consistent, that can be counted on. And sometimes I think we forget that a little bit in the doldrum of life, or maybe we underestimate the power of having a consistent time to take a step back and look outside and see what's the beauty around us, what's the beauty and the magic of childhood.
Mhm. Absolutely. I feel like the key, because all of this, if you're listening, you're like, wow, that's a lot. I can't think about that. Or maybe you're on the other side and this sounds like you already do this multiple times a month. I don't know. But like, I didn't set out with all of this in mind, right? It was really just carving aside the time, like you said.
Hmm.
And I think the magical question really is when. Um, because something we do individually with the kids is dates. And so like each of it, like I'll take, maybe we have two sons and one daughter, so like I'll take the two boys on individual dates one month and my wife will take my daughter, and then the next month we'll switch and I'll take my daughter and my wife will take the two boys individually.
Mm-hmm.
But like that was something we committed to even longer ago, like maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And just saying, no, like every Sunday night, actually, we have like our little planning session for the week, right? My wife and I. And then every first Sunday of the month, we plan out the general things in the month. And that includes kid dates and spouse dates.
Mm-hmm.
And like just that one habit helps like establish all the rest of these things and has been able to make it a lot easier because if to have that time set aside. And I don't always fill the dad day with tons of cool stuff, right? The bare minimum, there's going to be a dad movie with popcorn, right? But ideally, we
Yeah.
get more than that.
Yeah.
But that question of when has been the most ins- in, influential and hold the greatest leverage to making it all happen.
Raise your hand if this has happened to you today. You're in the middle of work, you're knocking things off the to-do list, getting stuff done, and your kid asks you to play. Do you drop everything? Do you ask them to wait a minute? What do you do? If you're like me, you don't always say yes right away. The kid moves on, you get busy, and you forget to circle back around and play. An opportunity to make a memory has been lost, and the dad guilt settles in. Not so anymore. I've developed a simple game that will enable you to take those small moments and have fun. It's called Dad's Adventure Dice Digital Edition. My 5-year-old daughter asks me nearly every day, can we do Dad Adventure Dice? What follows are some quick rolls of the dice that lead to a fun activity with an intriguing twist. Within 5 or 10 minutes, we've had a lot of fun, shared a lot of laughter, and made a memory together. Download your own Dad's Adventure Dice today Visit store.adventures.dad to download yours. That's store.adventure.dad to download Dad's Adventure Dice. Yeah, I love that you took that question and deliberately, intentionally answered that, right? Like, we as dads, we all know that, yeah, we should be spending more time with our kids. We all know, yes, we would love to play with our kids, go outside, do things, share movies with them, have popcorn, all of that stuff. We all know that we should do that and we want to do that and we would love to do that. Um, but it is just a question of when, and then having that weekly discipline to sit down and say, okay, we're going to schedule these things out. It's going to be on the calendar. Like, how many of us in our work lives, if we had a meeting on the calendar, we'd feel like, oh, I got to be there. I got to be there this time. I'm going to log in 2 minutes early, right? And because it's on the calendar, we feel like we're going to be there. We're going to show up. We're committed, right? And so just take that same idea, that same concept, and apply that to family life, to dad life, and say, yeah, this is our time to do dad day. This is our time to go do, man dates or daddy daughter dates, kind of whatever that is. That's great. So do you do dad day? Is it like the same? I'm assuming it's a Saturday. Do you do like the same Saturday every single month, or do you just kind of pick when you're doing that monthly planning, just say, this is the date that we're going to do it? How does that work?
Yeah, so we have it scheduled out. I think I can't remember if it's the second Saturday, or I could look at my calendar, but it's it's like the second or third Saturday of each month. And we just set up a recurring calendar thing on there. So then as we're sitting down for our monthly planning, it's like, oh, okay, is this still the best day, or should we adjust it? Your connection to like work, when you're sitting down with a manager and you're going to find a time for a one-on-one, you do kind of the same thing. And yeah, it's kind of saying, this is generally when it is. And then, of course, as we get closer, it's like, oh, wait, it's summertime and we're on vacation. How's that going to work? Are we going to do it a different time, or are we going to just not do it this month? But it's there. And so it just necessitates the conversation because it's in front of you. And, by making that one decision that one time, you don't have to keep making it every month or every week because it's there. And then you just kind of got to figure out what to do and how you're going to do it.
Any changes for dad day in the future, or do you kind of feel like you've fallen into a good rhythm, good cadence, good ritual, and we're just gonna maintain?
As our kids get older in different ages, so we're expecting a fourth child in just a few weeks, and this child's going to be a lot younger than the other ones. And so that's going to be interesting because I could see in another 5 years, my oldest will be 15, full teenager. He may be game for going to,
The art museum again.
Museum again. But my guess is I'm going to have to figure out some creative ways. Something I want to do more of, I started to do a little bit, but is like campouts. Maybe it's like we're going to do some things with a certain older group and then some things with the younger. And I think the dates will just be really important because that's individualized. But I think the vision of it will remain the same, of like, how can we try some new things together, and get a little uncomfortable, but also just have a lot of fun. And as kids get to be teenage years, I think there becomes a lot more possibilities of what that looks like, that we could try out. But yeah, I think I'll have to adjust my routine. I feel like that's the definition of parenting, is just like changing your plan.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be agile all the time because they're always changing. Their needs evolve, and their interests and their awareness of values shifts. And so I do have something I want to try to incorporate around, trying to be intentional with the values that I want to help my kids develop, and trying to do that in a fun and interesting way. I just don't really know exactly what that'll look like. But I think the goal, as long as I keep trying, then that's success, right? My commitment to making it work, and I don't get too wrapped around, is this good enough or not, and that kind of thing. And I think that mindset is important because it'd be easy to give up if they seem disappointed by this or that, or they didn't like this thing I thought that they would like. But hearing what they're interested in too helps a lot, like what would you guys like to do, or what is something you've always wondered about that we could go and explore? And perhaps that might be a good ritual to incorporate as like a brainstorming session kind of thing.
Like a
Just getting
planning,
them,
yeah.
get them to come up with some ideas, right? Especially as my kids get older, and maybe they could help facilitate some of the things as an opportunity to learn a little bit of leadership or something. I don't know.
Well, Greg, thank you so much. This has been a delightful conversation. I think this is probably something that we might try out at my house. Try implementing some mom day offs and mom days off, I suppose it would be, and do some dad days together. It sounds like a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good luck. Let me know how it goes.
Hey there, Dad. Are you looking for easy ways to strengthen your bond with your kids? I get it. Life can be hectic, but connecting with your little ones doesn't have to be complicated. I have a free resource for you: 10 incredibly easy ways to connect with your kids today. Packed with simple, research-backed, practical tips, this guide will help you create meaningful moments with your children, even on the busiest of days. Head over to adventures.dad/free download and get your hands on this invaluable resource today. Because the moments you share with your kids today will become the memories they cherish forever. Go to adventures.dad/free download to get this free guide today.